"You must not wear the ring," said the Duke of Carrick, closing her fingers over it. "Not for 6 weeks. Wear it on a ribbon under your gown, and let no soul in the county see it, and hate me for every day of the 6." "I could never hate you," Rosalind said, "but I may come very near to it on the Tuesdays." They were standing in the vestry of a small stone chapel on the wrong side of the border, with the ink not dry in the register, and a hired witness whistling outside the door, and Gideon had been a married man for 11 minutes. It was the most reckless thing he had done in his 34 years, and he could not make himself sorry for a moment of it. He had met her in April, in the mud in the lane outside Little Marden, where his horse had cast a shoe, and a curate's daughter had walked past him carrying a basket of parish bread, and had declined, with great politeness, to be impressed by him. "You are standing on my primroses," she had said. "I beg your pardon, do you know who I am?" "You are a man who does not look where he puts his boots." Then she had looked properly at the horse, and at the coat, and had gone slightly pale, and had said, "Oh," and then, with a dignity he thought of afterward for weeks, "You are still standing on them." Her name was Rosalind Thorne. Her father had been curate at Little Marden, and was 3 years dead. Her mother had left her £900 and a house in Kettle Street, both of them presently in the keeping of her uncle Barnabas, who had been appointed her trustee, and who had contrived, over 3 years, to make her live on £12 a year and gratitude. And she had once been engaged. Gideon learned that from the village, not from her. She had been engaged at 19 to Mr. Holly's Crane, a young man with a comfortable expectation and an eye on better, and Mr. Crane had thrown her over in the 3rd week of her father's illness, and married a brewer's daughter with £11,000, and had explained to everyone who would listen that Miss Thorne was a very worthy girl, but that a man must be practical. Little Marden had never quite forgiven her for it. That was the part Gideon could not stomach. Not the man's conduct. Men were often contemptible, but that the parish had somehow settled it in their minds that a girl who had been discarded must have deserved discarding, and had looked at her for 5 years with the particular kindness that is worse than cruelty. He courted her through May and June, badly and in secret, on the excuse of a drainage survey. He learned that she painted miniatures for 4 shillings each, and sent 3 shillings of every 4 to the almshouse. He learned that she read Latin better than his chaplain, and would not say so in company. He learned that she had a way of going still and straight when someone was unkind, like a candle in a draught refusing to go out, and that it undid him entirely. And in July he learned, from his own attorney, that Barnabas Thorne had petitioned the Court of Chancery to have his niece's legacy converted into a settlement upon her marriage. To a Mr. Dunnage, a Bristol creditor of Thorne's own, twice her age, with a bill of £900 outstanding against Thorne and a willingness to cancel it. "How long have they?" Gideon had asked. "The petition is heard in Michaelmas term, your grace. If she is unmarried when it is heard and her trustee consents on her behalf, the court will very likely allow it. She is not of age until December. And if she is married before, then her husband stands in place of the trustee, and the petition is waste paper. But it must be a marriage the court cannot pick apart, and it must be proved, and your grace must be present in London when the matter is called, or Thorne will swear the marriage a fiction, and drag it out until she is ruined by the talk." Which was how the Duke of Carrick came to be married in a stone chapel on the wrong side of the border on a wet Thursday in August, with a hired witness whistling outside the door. "6 weeks," he said to her in the vestry, "Michaelmas term. Until the thing is called and settled, your uncle must not know, or he will petition to have the marriage set aside as clandestine before ever the court hears the legacy, and he will make your name the talk of 4 counties while he does it. My attorney is emphatic. He is a tedious man, and he is right. And then, Gideon said, the whole county at once. The bells at Carrick, and the announcement in every paper my secretary can reach, and you at my right hand at the Michaelmas ball with the ring on the outside of your glove, where God and little Marden may both admire it. Rosalind was quiet, turning the ring on its ribbon. It was a plain old thing, his grandmother's, a garnet in a worn gold setting. He had 6 better in the strong room, and had chosen this one because it looked like something a curate's daughter might be given by a man who loved her rather than by a duke who was buying her. 6 weeks is a long while to be a secret, she said. It is 6 weeks, said Gideon, then never again. He believed it when he said it. He had not accounted for how the 6 weeks would look from her side of them. He was obliged to be in London. Chancery does not wait upon dukes, and Barnabas Thorne's counsel was a slippery article who filed and refiled, until Gideon's own attorney began sleeping in his chambers. Gideon wrote every second day, in a hand nobody could read but hers, and sent the letters under cover to the postmistress at Little Marden, who had been his nurse's sister, and who could keep a secret the way other women keep silver. Her letters back were brief and cheerful, and Gideon, reading them in a hired room in Lincoln's Inn, began to notice what was missing from them. She did not complain. That was what was missing. A woman with a right to complain who does not complain has decided something. In the 5th week, the letters said that her uncle had come from Bristol and was making free with the house in Kettle Street. In the 5th week, they also stopped mentioning the ribbon. He came north on the 28th of September with the order of the court in his coat and 11 hours of hard road behind him, and he did not go to Carrick. He went to the Michaelmas ball at the Assembly Rooms in Marden Cross, because his secretary's note had told him that Miss Thorne had been persuaded to attend by the vicar's wife, and because a man who has kept a woman's secret for 6 weeks ought to end it in the loudest room available. He was late. The stairs were crowded, and as he came up them, still in his traveling coat, he heard a young man's voice ahead of him in the doorway, pitched for an audience, delighted with itself. No, no, you mistake me. I bear her no ill will at all. I have the greatest respect for Miss Thorne. It is only that I have never in my life met a woman so entirely designed to be a governess. 5 years, and not an offer, not one. Even her uncle cannot dispose of her, and he is a man who could sell coals in June. Gideon stopped on the stair. Come, Crane, said somebody laughing. That is too hard. It is not hard, it is arithmetic, said Mr. Holly's Crane. Look at her. Gray silk and a borrowed fan, and she stands there as though she were somebody. Some women are wives, and some are worthy, and I thank heaven every day that I discovered the difference before it cost me. Gideon came up the last 3 stairs. He saw her before she saw him. She was standing under the window at the far end with a borrowed fan closed in her hand, perfectly straight, perfectly still, that candle in a draught stillness, and he knew from the set of her shoulders that she had heard every word and had resolved not to be seen to have heard it. And there was no ribbon at her throat. Something happened in Gideon's chest that he could not have described in a court of law. He had come north with an order of the court in his pocket, prepared to be magnificent. He discovered that he did not want to be magnificent. He wanted to have been there on all 42 of the days. He crossed the room. The room noticed it always did. Mrs. Thorne, he said to the vicar's wife, forgive me. Miss Thorne, will you walk a moment on the landing? She came. On the landing, out of the light, she said, You are come back. And her voice was very steady and not at all glad, and that frightened him more than Chancery ever had. Where is the ring? In my glove box in Kettle Street, She lifted her chin. "Your Grace, may an honest question be asked?" "You need not call me that." "I think perhaps I must, since I have called you nothing else in 6 weeks." She said it without heat, which was the worst of it. "My uncle has been in the house 9 days. He speaks of Mr. Dunnage as a settled thing. And I have sat in that parlor and said nothing, because I promised, and every night I have thought, he is a duke, and I am the girl Holly's Crane put down, and he married me in a border chapel with a hired witness, and told me to hide the ring under my gown. And tonight I heard that man tell a staircase full of people that no one would ever have me, and I could not answer him, and I found that I could not remember one good reason why not." Her eyes were bright and furious and level. "So, is it 6 weeks, or is it forever? Tell me plainly. If you are ashamed of me, I would infinitely rather be told than be careful." Gideon looked at her for a long moment. "Come with me," he said. "Where?" "Into the ballroom and no further, and you may leave the moment you wish." He held out his arm. "You ask to be told plainly. It is a night for plainly." She took his arm. He felt her hand shaking and did not remark on it. The room turned. The fiddles faltered and stopped, because they always stop when a duke walks into a county assembly at 10 o'clock in a traveling coat, and Gideon let the silence come and settle before he used it. "Mr. Crane," he said, "you are by the pillar, do not go." Crane's face went from pleasure to confusion to something else. "Your Grace, you said on the stair that Miss Thorne has had no offer in 5 years. You are mistaken, but the mistake is mine, and I intend to correct it in front of every person in this room, since it was in front of every person in this room that she was made to carry it." Gideon reached into his coat and drew out 2 papers. "The first of these is an order of the Court of Chancery, made this Monday, dismissing the petition of Mr. Barnabas Thorne to convert his niece's legacy into a marriage settlement, with costs against him, and removing him from his trust for dealings the court described as gross. He will not trouble her again, and if he attempts it, he will answer to my attorney, who enjoys such work far more than is decent." He heard, somewhere at the back of the room, a chair go over. "The second," Gideon said, "is a certified copy of a marriage register." He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Rosalind Thorne was married on the 14th of August in the parish of Kirk Bracken to Gideon Ashe Ravensworth, Duke of Carrick. She has been the Duchess of Carrick for 6 weeks and 2 days. She has spent every one of those days keeping my secret at the cost of her own good name, on the advice of my lawyers and the insistence of my own cowardice, and she has never once complained of it, which is more than I could have done." Nobody breathed. Rosalind's hand had gone rigid on his sleeve. So Gideon turned to Crane, and for the first time let the room see what he had been holding. "You did not discover the difference between a wife and a worthy woman, sir. You looked at the finest woman in this county and you could not see her, and I am the man who profited by your blindness, and I shall be grateful to you for it every day of my life. That is the only kindness you will have from me. My carriage will take you to your gate. It is not an offer." He did not watch Crane go. He had already turned. "Your Grace," Rosalind said very low, "you might have written it." "I might. I wrote you 21 letters, and not one of them said the thing that mattered, which is that the 6 weeks were not for the legacy. The legacy needed a fortnight. The other 4 weeks were mine, because I was afraid that when the county learned of it, they would say what Crane said tonight, that a duke had married a curate's daughter out of pity, and that you would hear it and believe it, and I thought I could arrange the world first and spare you." He took her hand off his sleeve and held it in both of his. "It was the coward's road, and it went straight over you. There is no version of this in which the fault is anywhere but with me." "Then say the thing that mattered," she said. "Now, since we are being plain." The Duke of Carrick, before 400 candles and half the gentry of 200s, went down on one knee on the parquet of the Marden Cross Assembly Rooms. "There is no need," she began. "There is every need. You were asked in a vestry with a hired witness. You will be asked here." He looked up at her. "Rosalind, not for the £900 which you shall have, nor for the house in Kettle Street which is yours, nor to spite any man, because you told me to mind where I put my boots when you had every reason to be afraid of me, because you send 3 shillings in 4 to the almshouse and would rather die than mention it, because you stood under that window tonight and would not let them see you flinch, and I have never in my life been so proud of anything, and I had no right to be proud, because I was not standing beside you." He drew the ribbon from his own coat pocket, where the ring had hung for 11 hours of hard road. "Wear it on the outside. Tonight. Will you have me anyway?" Rosalind Thorne, Duchess of Carrick, looked down at him. Then she took the ribbon and lifted the garnet ring off it and put it on over her glove, exactly as he had promised her in August. "Get up," she said, unsteadily. "You are ruining your knees and my composure." "Is that a yes?" "It was a yes in a vestry in August," she said. "This is only louder." He got up and kissed her hand, and then, because the fiddles had begun again, and because he had been 6 weeks in the wrong, kissed her, once, at the Temple, which the county discussed for a decade. The bells rang at Carrick the next morning, and did not stop until noon. They lived quietly, in the main. The house in Kettle Street was made over to the parish and became a school, and the Duchess taught Latin in it 2 mornings a week, and was fierce about the ablative. Barnabas Thorne removed to Bristol, and thence out of the story. Mr. Holly's crane was not received anywhere in the county again, which he attributed to the malice of the great, and which was in fact the doing of a great many quiet women with long memories. And in every winter of their marriage, on the 14th of August, Gideon rode out with his wife to a small stone chapel on the wrong side of the border, and they signed their names again in the visitors' book under the register, and walked back to the horses arm in arm through whatever weather there was. "6 weeks," she said to him once on such a morning, teasing. "Never again," said the Duke of Carrick, and meant it and kept it.